On the first day of Christmas, Darren Aronofsky gave to me a lot of trauma and more tears. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Ride Home podcast. My name is Abby.
Hey guys, it's Caitlin.
We are recording from home, surrounded by animals, because we had to go to a movie theater that was like 45 minutes away from our house.
Mm-hmm.
And by the time the movie got out, we were just emotionally wrecked and exhausted and traumatized.
Yeah.
So we were just like, you know what? We're going to record this one tomorrow.
Just take a little beat.
At one point during the movie, I looked over at Caitlin just to kind of see if she was liking it, and all I saw was just a traumatized human being. Like, your eyes were so wide.
I was just vacant.
Yeah.
Inside.
We saw Darren Aronofsky's The Whale last night. It is the return of Brendan Fraser.
Woo.
Who is arguably the most wonderful childhood actor of our lives. George of the Jungle, The Mummy.
Yeah.
Just everything that he did was so wonderful and classic, and it was so nice to have him back on the big screen.
Yeah.
I don't really know his full story, but I do know that he had some traumatic issues with people in Hollywood.
Interesting.
I forget the details with it, but he's had a long struggle back into the spotlight, and from all I've read and all I've seen about him, he's a wonderful human being. So we are very happy to see him back. And
we're sorry to hear about your trauma.
I know. And what a way to come back with a movie that he is now getting like serious Oscar buzz.
Yeah.
It also stars Sadie Sink, who we know from Stranger Things.
And we love her.
We love her. And Hung Chow, who we actually just recently saw in The Menu, who we also love. So this cast was
a treat.
Yeah, an absolute treat.
And a surprise guest from Ty Simpkins, who, if you said that name to me, I would say, no, who the hell is that? Right. But upon Googling, I realized that he is the kid from all the Insidious movies.
Now, did you recognize him? Like,
a little bit.
You did? Because you seemed like when you saw that, you were like, oh, him.
A little bit I did. Like, something about his eyes.
Uh-huh.
Like, I recognized. And then when I looked it up and I saw he was in all the Insidious movies, I was like, oh, it's him.
Oh, wow, it is him. Yeah.
But he's 21.
That's crazy.
So, like, he's not a little kid anymore.
Right.
He's clearly not being stalked by demons.
Right. I mean, figuratively.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Truly. The demons still haunt him. The demons
still haunt
Poor Ty. We're sorry.
As always, I'm going to read a quick synopsis from Google that is non-spoiler. And then a little bit later on in the podcast, we'll go into a spoiler section of the review.
Okay.
So the synopsis is: an obese and reclusive English teacher tries to reconnect with his estranged daughter for one last chance at redemption. Short and sweet.
And that's it.
That's all she wrote. Darren Aronofsky is basically known for traumatizing his viewers. He's the director of Requiem for a Dream and Black Swan, Mother, which Mother was one of the more traumatizing movies I think I've ever seen. So let's just say he continues that path with this one. But I will say that I think it was a little more heartfelt than I think we've seen from him in the past.
And it was a little toned down on like the dramatics as far as some of the little tricks and trinkets,
one might say.
Because a lot of those movies you just named are a little more obscure, and this wasn't really obscure. It was just plain old drama.
Yep.
Like humanity and in a movie.
Now I have to ask, because it's always my first question, is even though it was traumatizing to watch, not fresh out of the theater, but a day later after you've processed that trauma, what are your thoughts and feelings about The Whale?
I thought it was really good.
I
disassociated through much of it because it was
Heavy,
hard to watch at times, just took an emotional toll on me for sure. But that being said, I thought it was an excellent movie.
Yeah.
A film, if you will.
A film.
And really the biggest thing that stuck out to me in this movie was the acting.
Yeah. All across the board, everyone was great.
Everyone was great. It was a very small cast, so they kind of had to be.
Yeah.
There wasn't really a single extra or anything like that. I mean, there was no background players. That everyone was really in the foreground.
Yeah, and it was all on the same set. It was everything takes place inside Brendan Fraser's apartment, which I thought was a really cool aspect to it. I do know that this was a play.
Yes.
And the screenwriter is the playwright. So they adapted their own play to be for film, which you can tell just
I was
right
going to
away.
say, you could absolutely tell that this is a play. It kind of at times felt like we were watching a play, which I thought was cool, honestly. Like I could very easily see it as a stage play.
Right.
So that makes sense. But yeah, I mean, I really liked it. It was extremely brutal, I felt like, as far as emotions go, but really, really, really blown away by the acting in this movie.
Brendan Fraser became his character. Like, he became Charlie. And it was so interesting because we've seen the trailers, we've seen the promotional materials, so we're not shocked to see him in the fat suit that he's wearing. And so I initially was like, oh yeah, like Brendan Fraser, but very quickly you just like put that aside and it's just Charlie and it's just this character. And I thought his performance was deeply complex and layered, and I mean, he deserves every ounce of like the Oscar attention that he's getting.
For sure.
And it's so cool to see an actor that like we know from action adventure movies playing somebody with such like depth and complexity multiple years after his last performance, you know. Like I just thought I was stunned by how amazing he was in this.
I'm kind of happy you said the thing earlier about him having like a traumatic kind of experience, because I don't think I really knew that. I really, to be honest, didn't really
I need to look into it more.
I didn't really follow him like leaving acting,
right? But
like obviously it's a big deal that he's coming back to acting, and so like now he's more in the press and the news and everybody's like, oh my god, Brendan Fraser. But you can definitely tell like he himself has had trauma, because otherwise how could he go from The Mummy and like George of the Jungle and like some of the movies that he was in, some of the roles that he's played, and take so much time off and then come back and do this
and give like the performance of a lifetime,
an absolutely incredible performance, and blow everybody out of the water. Like he went somewhere to do this movie. Like he really went somewhere, and he became Charlie for sure. Like he left the building.
The thing about this movie that's a hang up for a lot of reviewers and a lot of people that have seen it, critics and people from the overweight community, is that this movie is fat phobic, and it's like basically like a lot of people think that the representation of Charlie is insensitive and almost grotesque. And I don't know if it is because you and I have watched 600 Pound Life before, but like the scenes that showed him taking care of himself didn't feel shocking to me. So him taking a shower or shaving or having to get into his bed, you know, we've seen that show on TLC before, and like if you are that size, that is how you have to take care of yourself, and that's how that's what their life looks like. And I thought the representation of his trauma that led to his food addiction, that led to his obesity, was fully represented,
for sure,
fully explained, and you connected to his character that way. And it wasn't just like, look at this fat dude, you know, and like, let's laugh at him, or let's look how gross he is. For me, it was, if you look at somebody with an addiction, you can either look at it as, wow, look, that's gross, they're lazy, they have an addiction. Or you can look at it with empathy, and you can see it as somebody treating their trauma with a coping mechanism that isn't healthy for them. You know, I'm not inside Darren Aronofsky's mind and I'm not inside the playwright's mind, but I would like to think that both of them were coming at it from a view of like empathy and not, you know, look at this fat guy.
Right. I could see where people were coming from with some of the fat phobic things. For me, I think it was more so in the scenes surrounding the food, where it was just trying to depict the reality of a person with a food addiction. And that's uncomfortable for people to see. Yeah. You know, and I think that feeling of like it being uncomfortable is like registering in people's brains as it being fat phobic. Yeah. And it's like, no, I don't necessarily think that it was being fat phobic. Right. I think it was like, this is how some people actually live. Yeah. It is not pleasant to look at. Right. I mean, I'll just say that, but it's like, I don't know. I think everything about this movie felt very intentional, to be honest. Yeah. And I think it was very careful to not push the envelope too far into becoming fat phobic.
Like, we didn't see bed sores or like, you know, close-ups of that, and we didn't see close-ups of his mouth while he was eating. No. And I think it goes to, I've seen a couple of things on TikTok where it's, you know, a overweight person doing a eating video or like a mukbang video. And like the comments are always like, go on a diet, like that's 400,000 calories. And then like you'll see a skinny girl eating the same meal, filming like a mukbang. And all the comments are like, yes, girl, like you eat like a queen. Like I want to eat like that too. Like you can throw it back. And I think just the act of seeing somebody who's overweight eating, people are like, ew, gross. And I think part of the reaction to this movie is people lacking that empathy in themselves and like recognizing their own fat phobia and then them being like pointing the finger at the movie and being like, you made me feel this way. Exactly. You made me think that this person is gross. Exactly. And like, I did not see it at all like that at all.
No. And I think that's honestly, that's just a representation of who we are as a country and our culture. Right. I mean, we are kind of trying, I think our generation and the generations below us are trying to undo the fat phobia that has been shoved down our throats our whole lives. Right. And so it's hard to like reinvent your brain sometimes. Yeah. Like you said, recognizing your own fat phobia. Yeah. And checking it and having the empathy to say, hey, this guy has just been through a lot of shit and he eats to numb his pain. He eats to forget, and obviously where this character is at in his life is at the most extreme case of obesity and food addiction that you could ever depict. And so that's the point. It's like, this is the extreme and it's supposed to be like that, right? But I think it, like I said, I really do think it was careful to not be like
voyeuristic.
No, and not like At any point did I feel like it was poking fun at or making it like a caricature or anything. I mean, I think it was extremely respectful. Yeah. And I also depiction.
Feel like, I don't know, like obviously like I don't know Brendan Fraser personally, but I feel like Brendan Fraser wouldn't take a role that was offensive. I mean, he's not a skinny guy. Obviously he's not, you know, that size. Right. But I truly don't think he would take a role if everyone on that set or in that like casting room or script read was coming at it as a place of like, look at how disgusting Charlie is. I just can't buy that.
And all of the characters that interact with him don't treat him like that either. Right. And so if it were that kind of a thing where it was like, oh, he's the big old gross fat guy. Yeah. Like, I don't think this movie would have happened because that's not what it's about. And it's not about him being disgusting or gross or any of that. It's about him being a person. Right. With really difficult things that he has had to deal with and actively living with the most difficult thing, which is his food addiction.
And I think the thing that is represented in the movie is Sadie Sink is his daughter that he hasn't seen since she was 8 years old and she's 17 now. And she comes into his life with a lot of anger, a lot. And she does make comments about his weight, and she is really cruel to him, but it's not because he's fat. It's because she's mad at him for what he did to her, for leaving her life. And I feel like every character that we come across sees him as Charlie and comes to the play or the, you know, whatever, you know, with their own experience with him. I just thought that it was a story more about people and their relationships and their shared trauma and how they're all working through it and how they all have problems. I will say I have small critiques. I think it had a few pacing issues. I think there was a middle section where there wasn't much development for Sadie Sink's character, and I was just kind of waiting for it to happen. And so it was like, instead of there being a full arc that happens across the whole film, it was like she has one note for the entire movie and then her arc happens right at the end. And I would have liked to see more depth from her throughout. My other criticism was also that there were a couple of lines or scenes that went a little into playland where the lines felt a little unnatural and a little clunky, and seeing a line like that delivered in a close-up compared to like on a stage, I think having the playwright adapt it to the screen, they probably should have had like it go through a couple of different writers and not just him. So I think the script did have its flaws. A few of the characters weren't like fully fleshed out. Like I thought Sadie Sink's mother, Mary is her name. I thought she wasn't really fully fleshed out. But overall, I really enjoyed this movie. And I think, like we said before, his performance in particular was really just incredible to watch some, like an actor take themselves into that place.
Yeah, I will agree with you about the pacing. For sure, I did notice that there were just a few points where it was kind of just like
dragging a little bit.
Pick it up.
Yeah.
And it did feel, I completely also agree with you about it feeling a little bit play. Like it was just, I think it could have used a filmmaker's perspective or a screenwriter's perspective to just kind of fine tune it a little bit.
Which I'm not gonna lie, like Darren Aronofsky is not the person to edit a script either. So if he was the one that was editing,
that's why I didn't say him,
because he is all about the melodrama and he is all about, you know, the big moments and the shock value and somebody, you know, screaming passionately on screen. And like there's a time and a place for that, obviously,
right?
But I think those quiet moments in the middle could have used a little bit more development and, like you said, like a filmmaker's touch.
I agree. Okay, so
popcorn
that
rating?
being said, let's do it.
You know what? I'm gonna give it a large. I think for me, the shock on your face right now, I think this was probably, besides Cate Blanchett, the performance of the year for me. I was again in awe of Brendan Fraser's ability to just make us get completely lost in a world and in a character. And this tiny little apartment on the second floor of a shitty apartment building in Idaho became this very real place.
Yeah.
With these very real people. And I thought it took, like we were saying before, the edge off of Darren, where, you know, he always goes for those kind of shocking, disturbing moments. And I thought this one really was a human story that wasn't trying to push the boundaries of anything. It was just a human story about a group of people. And I thought it was great.
I was leaning towards a medium due to the trauma.
You can still give it a medium.
No, but listen, so I have to give it a large because A, Brendan Fraser, and B, I really do think that just collectively as a whole, the whole cast was amazing. And I think the story was beautiful. I think it was so real and so relatable on some level to anyone. Whether you've struggled with addiction or food problems or self-esteem or body image or trauma, like
divorce,
someone,
parenting.
yeah, literally anyone could relate to a piece of this movie.
Yeah.
To me, very stripped down for Darren Aronofsky.
Yeah.
And I liked that.
Yeah.
I felt like it was really genuine. And
see, that's a good word for it, is that I feel like a lot of his like previous work isn't genuine. Like it feels forced. The first one I ever saw from him was Requiem for a Dream. And like, I remember all the film bros back in the day were like, this is the movie. And I remember watching it and just being like, this is over the top heavy. Like this is over the top traumatizing.
Yeah.
And this one just didn't feel over the top for me. And it felt very, like you said, genuine.
Very genuine, very heartfelt. I mean, honestly, very difficult to watch, like I said earlier, but like not because it was overdone, just because it was so real. This is one that I feel like the effects are going to be lingering with me for a while.
Yeah.
Because it was a whole lot to process for me. I mean,
we're going to process all of it.
Okay, yeah.
In the spoiler section.
Let's go.
So
I have things to say.
Beep, beep. Welcome back to the spoiler portion of the episode.
AKA my favorite part.
Caitlin's favorite
part. So let's get this started with talking about some of the other characters. Because I know we were very Charlie heavy, which is Brendan Fraser's character. He is, of course, the lead.
It was hard to not give spoilers away when talking about the other characters as well. There were some very specific things that made each character their character that you couldn't really talk about.
We kind of just had to focus on Charlie.
Yeah.
So now that we don't have to do that anymore, we love Charlie. Amazing character. We've already said that.
Right.
So one of the most interesting characters to me was barely even a character.
We didn't see his face until the end.
Almost right at the end. So this is the pizza delivery guy who we do find out his name. His name is Dan. Charlie orders pizzas from this place.
It looks like every night.
Pretty much every night. And the person who delivers the pizza starts talking to him and like asking if he's okay.
Because he never answers the door.
He never answers the door, and he always leaves the money in the mailbox on the door. Yeah. And the delivery guy first starts out like asking, is everything okay in there? And he's like, yes, everything's fine. And he's like, okay. Then like the next day he comes back and he asks what his name is, and he tells him, and blah blah blah.
Yeah. And
so they kind of have this little, almost like a friendship blossoming, you know, like you can tell that the pizza delivery guy is trying to connect with him. And Charlie seems touched by that, honestly. Like, because you can tell a lot of his dignity has been stripped of him. Yeah. I think that makes him feel noticed and important. You can tell just in how he reacts to the delivery guy asking him questions like that. He's just really touched, almost, you know, that he's asking him that. I thought that was really cool. And you only see his profile, like his shadow.
That was one of the biggest like play things was seeing the shadow in the window for a lot of characters where you could see before somebody was at the door that they were coming.
Yes.
And I thought that was so like interesting because I was like, of course this was a play.
Yeah. It looked like a play. Yeah. So I just thought that was a really cool touch, and I thought it was sweet. Now, of course, it does get a little bit sad.
I was going to say, yeah.
Yeah, it was sweet until it wasn't.
Yeah.
So there is one day that Dan and Charlie see each other because Dan kind of waits around on the stairwell to see Charlie come out to get his pizzas, and he sees him and he has kind of like a horrified and shocked reaction at him and kind of like runs away.
I knew Dan was going to be waiting on the stairwell, just the way that they shot it. I was kind of expecting it to happen, but I wasn't expecting him to kind of gasp and run away. I thought that was a weird choice.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if it was maybe the actor or the way it was directed or something, but I feel like maybe they're trying to portray Dan's embarrassment of being caught, kind of waiting and watching, and like maybe he feels like shame and embarrassment of like, oh my God, like, why am I standing here waiting to see this guy? Like, he's a person. Like, why am I doing this to him?
Yeah.
Because I mean, I think we've all had the experience of like your gaze lingering a little too long on somebody, and then that person making eye contact with you, and the immediate feeling you have is embarrassment. Like, wow, I feel shitty for doing that. Yeah. And we've all done it. So maybe that was...
Maybe so. Yeah, that makes sense.
That makes more sense to me than him gasping like a little girl, like, oh my God, he's so fat, and then running away. Like, that just didn't check out for me, and I didn't think that was like a good moment.
Maybe that's it. Maybe he was just embarrassed at himself for like hovering around a creep on this guy.
Right.
And be like, oh fuck, I just ruined it. Like, we had this like nice little friendship kind of thing going, and then now I'm a weirdo who's standing here watching him.
I know we were saying before about the other characters and how they treat Charlie, and I think that we both really liked Hung Chao's performance of Liz, who we find out is not just like a paid nurse or, you know, a medical assistant. She is Charlie's former partner's sister. The reason why Charlie left his family was because he is gay, and he fell in love with a former student. And that former student, because of his struggle with his Christianity and his religious trauma, eventually killed himself. And so that is the reason for Charlie's weight. And also the kind of trauma bond between Liz and Charlie is very palpable and very easy to connect with.
Yeah.
And before you even know that Alan was Liz's brother, you felt like there was a connection there that was way deeper than her just stopping by to check in on
that
him.
Checks on him.
Yeah. That being said, I think the biggest theme outside of sort of the redemption arc between Charlie and his daughter was religious trauma. And I mean, sure as hell, both of us can relate to that. Yeah. Yikes. So seeing a movie really dive, I mean, like deep dive into the effects of religious trauma and the effects of religion for queer people in general, and how confusing and traumatizing and horrific of an experience it can be growing up queer of any kind in the Christian culture and the church.
Right.
And I think their way of unpacking that and showing how people use religion either to hide from their trauma, which the missionary, the boy that comes to Charlie's door, you know, he is represented as the person that instead of facing his own flaws, he thinks that as long as he is converting other people to Christianity, he doesn't have to face himself.
Right.
He's just going to be one of those people that hides in religion. And as long as he makes mommy and daddy happy and he's saving souls, then he's okay.
And nothing else matters.
Yep. Nothing
else. No
else.
consequences for any of your actions.
Nope.
Because the biggest consequence of all is getting to heaven.
Yep.
So as long as you're doing what you're supposed to do to get to heaven, the rest of it, just whatever.
Yeah. One of the most impactful moments was when he confronts Thomas about his sexuality. And he had just had a binge and was, you know, physically sick from this binge. And we had just seen him eat, you know, a lot. And Thomas comes in the room, which, by the way, the doubting Thomas nod was quite on the nose for that one. But Thomas comes in, and like we had just seen this scene really truly exposing Charlie's darkest moment and how he turns to binge eating as his coping mechanism. And Charlie and Thomas's relationship comes to a head, and the thing that Thomas is disgusted by is not that Charlie is 600 pounds. It's that he's gay. And when he's talking to him about this Bible verse about living for the flesh and of the flesh and all that, he's not even talking about his weight.
Nope.
He's literally talking about being gay. And so for this moment, Charlie, I think, says, "Are you disgusted by me?" And Thomas like screams like, "Yes, I am." He is truly just honestly disgusted by the fact that Charlie is gay.
Yeah, because Charlie starts like telling him like intimate things about him and Alan, and like he's having like a physical like repulsed reaction.
Yeah.
And so he's not reacting to him because of what he looks like and how he appears.
Yeah.
Like he's reacting that way because he's sharing details about his life with his partner.
Yeah.
And it's like you said, we of course can relate to that because we know as well as anyone, like religious people in our life who have turned us away, so to speak, because we're queer. And it's like, that's the one thing that you just can't do.
Yeah, that's like, the one thing you cannot get over.
We'll never understand it, to be honest. But it was very real depiction of that, I felt like.
And I thought, too, is that going back to everybody's experience with Charlie not being about his weight, the redemption arc between Brendan Fraser's character and Sadie Sink was probably the one thing that, like, if I had the opportunity to edit the script, I would have done a little bit differently. Sadie Sink, her character Ellie, was borderline unredeemable. You know? Like, you know, she basically, Brendan Fraser is begging for her forgiveness and for his redemption. And, you know, he knows he's dying. And so he's like, I really just need my daughter to forgive me. And she was so absolutely horrific to him, to every person. And I wished that they had just given us a little hint of the hurt, suffering child and not just given us
like a psychopath.
An hour and 30 minutes of a psychopath.
Right.
And then expected us to believe that she's
going to figure it out and be okay.
Which in the last 10 minutes of the movie, you know, she's there witnessing him dying and you can tell that she's like scared that he's dying. And like, you know, I think she calls him daddy at one point. And I was like, that would be such a beautiful moment if you saw little glimpses of that. And it doesn't have to be like this huge turnaround or this huge heartwarming story of like them getting to know each other and having cute little scenes.
Right.
But I wish that they had just given us small pieces of a glimpse into her redemption because it's every single person in that entire cast was having their own redemption arc. It wasn't just Charlie. And every single one of them had a believable arc and experience and character. And for some reason, Ellie's character just was not it. I don't know if maybe like the writer hasn't had a teenage girl in his life because it felt very like, like hefty. Like
it was a little like too troubled.
Yes.
Like it was like, okay, like, hello, I work with teenagers every day and I know that they can be really shitty. But at the end of the day, even the shittiest kid has like a piece of something about them. I'm like, but he's this or but she's that. And it's like, that's what was missing. And honestly, I think that's why at the end of the movie, like I didn't cry and I didn't feel very emotional because she was so heartless. And that's what was missing for me. Was her having any inkling of a heart. Like that we didn't get that.
Which like even the mom was like, dude, she's evil.
Like the mom's
her
like,
own
no,
mother
like,
was like, no, she's evil.
And like he was just like, she's great, she's amazing, she's the most wonderful person, because he was just like trying to convince himself of that because he missed out on her whole life and now he's dying. And so he's just like trying to just kind of put rose-colored glasses on and just be like, she's cool, like she's the best person ever. And it's just like, bro, like she might be a sociopath though. Which that kind of rounds everything out with the reason why this movie is called The Whale is not calling him a whale. No, which I was very relieved. Because I was like, not the whale.
I know. Which, I mean, maybe that is part of it. I didn't write it, but I'm gonna hope that the writer didn't mean it that way. The reason that it's called The Whale is because throughout the movie, every time Charlie is having an episode with his heart, because he has congestive heart failure, when he has pain and he thinks he's about to die, he either reads or he asks somebody to read an essay that is clearly written by a child and is about Moby Dick. And we get to the end of the movie, and obviously we find out that it was something that his daughter wrote.
Yeah.
And I think what you were saying about those like rose-colored glasses is like, that is the person that he's had in his head, is this girl that, you know, he keeps saying it's the best essay he's ever read, which obviously he's an English teacher, so that's high praise.
Right.
But the reason why he loves it is because it's honest, and it's how somebody actually felt about the book. And he talks all the time to his own students about, give me your truth. Right. Don't just give me the answer that you think I want.
Right.
The contrast of having him tell every person in his life, his students, Liz, his daughter, that he wants them to be true to themselves and to be honest and vulnerable, and then he himself is hiding in his apartment and you know, won't turn his camera on for his students and all that. And I thought that was a really beautiful representation of somebody who was still finding the good in other people and in life, while clearly suffering and feeling terrible about themselves, which I think is a very relatable feeling for a lot of people.
For sure. And I think that was depicted really well, honestly. Yeah. And I think that was like, if anything, that was like the one sweet thing about the relationship that we did have, was like her essay. And like, he kept it in a little page protector.
I know.
It was really sweet.
I did cry, which, like, that's hilarious that I did and
I
you
know,
didn't, because I am not the crier.
I'm telling you, I was disassociating.
Yeah.
Like, I was actively checking out.
You said, trauma.
I said too much trauma for one night. Thank you.
As we're like going through the spoiler section, I'm a little bit like annoyed with myself that I gave it a large because of the Sadie Sink problem. I think it is a big enough problem that it probably does warrant a medium, now that I'm thinking about it. But you know what? I'm sticking to large just because of Brendan Fraser.
Yeah, we have to keep it large for Brendan.
That does it for us. We are going to be back next week with another episode. It'll be another at-home episode, because we're going to review Glass Onion, a Knives Out story.
Woo!
Which we're very excited about, because we love Knives Out. Loved it.
Loved it.
Loved it. So we'll be back next week. Most importantly, we just want to wish anybody who celebrates Christmas a very Merry Christmas.
Yes.
Enjoy any downtime that you guys have. Hopefully you have some time off of work. You can just relax and watch some little movies, maybe.
Yeah, we hope so.
So Merry Christmas, everybody.
Merry Christmas, and thanks for joining us on the ride home.